The poem that you just heard was written probably over 5 years ago by this point. And as to the exact reason as to why it was written, I can't necessarily tell you for a fact. I can tell you in general that it was written because I had this fantasy when I was in school that one day, after finishing the last math class, the last math homework that I was ever going to have to do, I fantasized about gathering all of it together, all of my homework, all the papers, everything, all the scrap paper that I had been jotting stuff down on, trying to solve equations and things of that nature, and have a little bonfire. And I fantasized recording like a vlog over the course of, I don't know, a couple hours, maybe, and then do like a supercut of me just sort of crumpling the papers up and throwing them into the fire pit. It was actually very serendipitous when I went to gather up stuff to make this video. This specific poem, Burning Numbers, was already printed out, sitting with my old math homework. I don't know why. I don't remember. I found a digital copy on my computer, and I thought to myself I should probably have a printout so that way I can, reference it or things like that. And then it was just there. And I legitimately don't know how or why I had a printed copy of this one. This is not my best work. I haven't been writing poetry all that long, but this is not, great. This is very letting off steam type poetry. It's not my best stuff, but for some reason, this one was printed off. And that's just very interesting. Again, serendipitous for this video, I suppose. I have a complicated history with mathematics. So growing up all through, middle school, high school, it was always the most difficult subject for me. And as to why, I think it's just how I'm wired. I can't tell you exactly why. I think it's because what tends to happen is that I think that I know what I'm doing, and then I will do something incorrectly and keep doing that incorrect thing and get frustrated as to why I'm not getting the right answers or why it's not working. And then eventually I would have to, look it up or find somebody to explain it to me. And it was always just frustrating, right? And then later on, once you got into college math, specifically college algebra, my biggest problem with college algebra is that the examples that they would give us on the homework are basically like softball examples. Like, in the most pristine, idealistic of situations, here's like a very simple problem with no curveballs, nothing complicated, and here's the answer. And then you'd actually go to do one of these problems for real for your lesson, and there's some sort of a really weird rule-breaking thing where it's like, but there's a 0 there, which means the entire problem is invalidated or something like that, where we go from the most simple, basic explanation of how something works, and then the first question you run into has some sort of a really weird one-off rule. It's a lot like the English language, where it's like you learn all these rules, and then there's like a trillion exceptions to those rules. And so that always made it very frustrating for me. My first attempt at college algebra, I failed to get a passing grade on my overall by a few percentage points. I was so close. And I can't say that I was surprised. Going into it, I knew that math was not my strong suit. When I took the SATs, for example, before I even walked into the building to take the test, I knew exactly what my results were going to be. I knew that I was going to be above average in some aspects of English and reading comprehension, and then about average in pretty much everything except math. Math, I knew for a fact walking into that building that I was going to leave with a substandard score. And that's exactly what happened. I was right on all fronts there. So once I got into college algebra, I knew what I was working with, and I knew my deficit. I knew that I wasn't very skilled at it, but to fail by just a few percentage points, that was really rough. What followed was basically my school trying to figure out, okay, what's an alternative math learning program that you can use. And they selected a little company called Alex. And now many of you might know about Alex or have taken stuff through them. And I'm going to try and be as delicate as I can with this. I'm not trying to fillet them. I'm not trying to be super mean or critical. But my Alex experience was pretty terrible. And if you're not familiar with, I guess, some of the core tenets of Alex, it tries to gamify the learning experience. So as an example, you might get introduced to a new topic, a new concept of mathematics. And then what you have to do is you must get 5 answers correct in a row, and then the Alex system files that away and says, okay, this person understands this concept. They got the correct answer 5 times in a row. They're all good. Here's the problem. Since I'm doing this over the course of months, what ends up happening is you take these quizzes that have stuff on it that you haven't practiced in actual, like a month, like a concept that you haven't studied in a month, because as far as the computer's concerned, you've already learned that. You already know how to do it. So if you get it wrong on the quiz, it flags that away and says, okay, actually, you don't know this. You need to go back and relearn it. That means that you have to go back to that topic and get it correct 3 times in a row. And then they say, okay, you definitely know it now. And so the learning experience through Alex was a bit like 2 steps forward, 1 step back. I did that for a year, okay? A year. I did all of these topics, learning them as quickly as I could over the course of months. I finally master all 247 topics, right? 240 plus topics. And I will never forget the day that I got this sent to my email, which is a certificate of completion. And it says, you have completed college algebra 100%. I sent a message to my family, my parents, just excited that I didn't have to mess with math anymore, that I was done, because it was the last math course that I was ever going to have to take. Then fast forward about a month, maybe more, and I'm sitting in the waiting room of a medical facility after having just got one of my COVID shots, or I can't remember if it was one of my shots or one of my boosters. Either way, there's like a 15-minute waiting period that they have you go through before they let you get in your car and drive away, because some people have adverse effects to the boosters or whatnot. So I needed to just cool my heels there. And while I'm there, I'm looking at my phone and I see a notification pop up that I've just been emailed by somebody from Alex. So the thing was, this was during the period of time where I was matriculating to Liberty University online. So I had to have all of my school paperwork up to that point submitted, have the proof of all my grades and everything. And I was basically told, hey, we don't have you down as having finished your college algebra requirement. And I was like, that's weird. I've finished the Alex program. Like, they sent me this, so I thought I was done. Come to find out that day that there was a final test that I hadn't taken and had missed the deadline for. Now, I went back and I checked my email, my school email, and I could not find any email at any given point from Alex telling me about any sort of final test. And the thing was, while I was trying to matriculate, I had to keep my account with Alex open in order to get my paperwork and everything. So I had been paying out of my own pocket for a couple months to keep my account active, so that way I could get my grades from them to Liberty. The guy that I'm messaging back and forth to, I'm trying to explain to him, hey, I haven't studied any of this stuff in like months. I haven't looked at it. I haven't been studying it. I haven't been practicing it because I thought I thought I was done. I thought I was done. And he basically says, don't panic, just take it. We'll unlock it for you in a special circumstance. We'll open up the test and you can just take it in like 3 days, 5 days, whatever. And so I'm starting to panic at this point. So for the next 5 days, I try and cram as much as I can, trying to relearn 240 plus distinct topics, some of which involve complicated, like, graphing things that, again, I just hadn't touched in so long. I hadn't retained it. My brain had jettisoned all of that information the moment that I thought I didn't need it anymore. And I failed. The Alex people, they didn't give me any sort of grace. They didn't give me any sort of, there was no olive branch really, other than, well, you can take it again, basically. That was it. That was all that they could give me. And so I had to make a really tough decision and say, I guess I'm just going to have to take math for the 3rd time at my new school and hope that their math program is better. Luckily, when I started my courses at my new school, they basically had my option that they could recommend was quantitative reasoning, which the way it was described to me was, it was not actually stated as math for dummies. It was described to me as math for art students. I'm not going to make any jokes. It's just a fact that I needed something a little bit more relatable in any sort of way, even just down to what sort of concepts we were learning. And long story short, I eventually did manage to pass that 3rd math attempt. It was a B. It brought my overall grade point average down, but I did not care. I was just happy to be done with math once and for all, and this time it was for real, and there was no rug pull at the end. Where am I going with this? You've seen the title of the video, and the very overly dramatic poem reading at the beginning as well. In essence, this right here, this is not even all of it, but this is a sizable chunk of it. These are scratch paper pages. So, paper that I had next to me while I was trying to study, while I was trying to learn. And for specifically the 1st and the 2nd math attempts that I had, there was a lot of stress because some aspects of what I was learning were not being communicated very well. So there would be visual examples on my computer screen of like, okay, step 1, here's what you do. Step 2, here's what the equation's going to look like. But there would be very little information as to how you get from step 1 to step 2. So it sort of becomes this really twisted spot the difference challenge of like, what changed? What's different? Like, how did this become that? And so I had to sort of teach myself college algebra a lot of the time. The way that the information was being given to me was not handled well. I had to rely heavily on YouTube tutorials from other schools, from other places, from other content creators on the math side of YouTube to explain these concepts to me, because these collegiate courses weren't explaining them to me. And I would waste hours pounding my head against a wall trying to comprehend or learn a new topic or a new concept. And it was all just me. It was just trial and error. It was just repeating stuff and trying and trying and trying and trying and trying. I mean, if you look at even one of these pages, you can see the level of mania that you're working with here. Just like a million different problems, trying them a million different ways. Just a nightmare. A nightmare. An absolute nightmare. But all that to say, I have a very complicated relationship with mathematics. And over the course of my education, I had very extreme negative feelings about it. It was just something that hung over my head and just sort of made learning really unfun. And that's not a part of who I am. Usually I love learning. I love learning new topics, new concepts. I love all that. But math to me was like one of the biggest things in my life from middle school to high school to college. that would really make me feel small and dumb. And I hated it for that. Since I had some time and distance between those super negative feelings that I was feeling in the moment, in the heat of battle, so to speak, with my mathematics education, and since I have had time to really think about that over the last 5-6 years, about whether or not I really did want to burn it as some sort of a final statement. But then I had a different idea entirely. Go with me on this one. About a year ago, I came across a video that was talking about taking scrap paper and turning it into sketchbook paper. And as soon as I heard that, the first place that my mind went was, well, I got a lot of scrap paper. And then I thought an extra second and thought to myself, where's all that mathematics sketch paper that I have? All the paper that I scratched out all those equations on. That's probably where most of my scrap paper is, to be honest. So, my plan is I'm going to try and document this process as best as I can. But what I'd like to do is take all that scrap paper, and I'm going to find more. I know I will. That was just what was accessible easily in my room. Take all of it, find a tutorial online. I think I already have one in mind, and try and follow it as best as I can, and just show you guys the process of taking scrap paper and turning it into sketchbook paper. It's a super simple concept in theory. We'll see how complicated and into the weeds I get with it, but I think it'll just be really good for me. Sort of shaking the dust off of myself of school, now that I'm graduated and everything. I feel like taking all of that stuff, including all that sort of negative association, negative feelings, and just sort of turning it into something else, I think is going to be really good for me in general, and it'll be a fun project. So my plan is to split it up maybe in 3 parts. So this first video obviously is just like the concept, the ideation, and then step 2 will be actually following some of the processes, getting all the materials, and then the third video at some point hopefully will be me showing it off to you guys, the completed sketch paper. But that's all theoretical. This is what I'd like to do. We'll see whether or not I can handle it, but that's the plan. And since this video might not be super long, here's just a bunch of photos from the first 4 months of the year.